In today's video we are going to take a look at a couple of folders designed by Chaves and produced by Riot. So I'm expecting, high quality in terms of fit and finish, opening and closing action, centering, and I guess I will say sharpness as well. Riot is making sharp knives, but they may not be the ones that make the sharpest of knives. Still should slice paper really well, and those sorts of tests that I generally conduct in my reviews or overviews. So what I have here on the table is two of the newly released Kickstop version, the Redencion Kickstop, the drop point and the Tanto. I also have three Liberation 229s, drop point. Well, I don't know which one is in which, but let's say drop point, Tanto, and then the Sangre or Sangre, I think it's called. We also have two Redencion Street here, drop point and Tanto. The Sangre version was out of stock, and the Kickstop is only offered in drop point and Tanto. So quite a few different sizes and blade shapes. All the same steel, I think, pretty much, titanium and M390, which is a pretty good combination, to say that. So I'm not quite sure which one to begin with. Perhaps we should go with, the Kickstop is the newest release, so I guess people is, the most interested in these two. But to me personally, all of these knives are kind of new. I did get to handle one of them, so I some time ago, so I know that I like them. That is why I decided to order a few, because I was, dragging behind. And the ones that I could not order was the Redencion 229 with flipper tabs. Those were out of stock. Otherwise I would have maybe ordered them. Then again, the Kickstop versions do feature flipper tabs instead of thumb studs, so but slightly different design. And there are a lot of Chaves knives out there. I was quite confused in the beginning to know which one, what are the differences between the different models. And these Redencion Street here is generation 4. I have no clue what was the generation 1, 2 and 3, and what modifications has been done, etc. Like I said, I'm quite new to Chaves. To be honest, I wasn't really interested in it like a few years ago. I thought it was a pretty boring design. I also wasn't the biggest fan of thumb studs, but I've grown to like thumb studs quite a lot, so sometimes even prefer it over flipper tabs. But I thought it was, a pretty plain looking knife, but sometimes, looks can be a bit deceiving. I will also say that one difference that I know of all of these knives compared to older versions is that previously the pocket clip was only the skull version pocket clip. With all of these I should be getting an extra clip, which is a more plain version, not a skull version. I'm not going to switch the pocket clips. I'm going to go with the skull version. At first I thought the skull was a bit, a little bit over the top. But I think I've maybe grown to like it a bit more. I will, however, say right away that I know that the screws are now on the outside. It's not, hidden screws. So there are two screws in the head of the skull. And I think that takes away from the aesthetics. I would have liked the screws to remain hidden, but I get it. People might want to change to a less, something a bit more plain in terms of pocket clips, and well, now people have the chance. Then again, people could have changed the pocket clip with hidden screws as well, but they would have had to disassemble the knife. So I guess it's, they wanted to make it easier, and I get it, but I think that it takes away a bit from the aesthetics. So enough about that. I think that we are going to start with the Kickstop versions, just because they are the newest ones, and then we can go into the other versions. So let me just clean off the table here, and we can do a bit of an unboxing. Should go fairly fast since there aren't a whole lot of contents to unbox. Here we have two more or less identical boxes with slightly different content. So the difference with the boxes here is stated on the side. One being a Kickstop drop point, the other one being a Kickstop Tanto. So let's see what we got here. This is the drop point. So on the top here of the box we have Chaves logo, the skull key or the skeleton key, I'm not sure what to call it, but I think the description is pretty fitting at least. A key and a skull. On the side here we have some text reading Ultramar, and on the two sides we have some information about the specific model that can be found inside. Paper, hard paper box. Let's open it up like this to reveal some silica gel, bag of silica gel. We can save that. And here we have the, let's see if we can grab it, a bit more plain pocket clip. Really, plain, straightforward design. But for those that do not want, an over-the-top skull pocket clip, this will definitely be on the, more low profile, I would say. It's not screaming. So let's put that back in here. We're not going to change it. And then we have the Kickstop 229 Redencion drop point. You can see the flipper tab there as well, and the Kickstop logo or mark, and the skull clip. Man, I wish these screws were hidden, but it is what it is. So, and the packaging is going to be identical here on the Tanto version as well, like a bag of silica gel, the pocket clip and the knife itself. So, let's pick this one out. So, this is the drop point version of the Redencion 229 Kickstop edition, or Kickstop version perhaps. And yeah, you will notice that the flipper tab is not visible. And there's also a bit of extra blade length here compared to the other versions, where there's more of a semi-large sharpening choil. This one just goes pretty much all the way in, giving you a bit more cutting edge. Could be useful, but something inside me says that, from an aesthetic point of view, I kind of prefer the choil area, but I do get that this is probably a bit more useful. It's gonna be personal preferences as always when we are talking specific design elements in different knives. But let's also take a look here at the Tanto version. We can try to put them a bit side to side to look at the different grinds. So this being the Tanto. It definitely has a bit more of a aggressive look compared to the drop point. So let's see. Okay, let's do it like that. Perhaps like this. I mean, we don't need to compare the handles, we just want to compare the blade profiles, right? It's kind of difficult, actually. Hopefully you will see the difference. The drop point here is on top, the tanto is on the bottom. Yeah, this should be good. So now we have, a bit of a feeling of the different grinds. Then we can focus on, what did I pick here, the drop point, to, go over the actual specifications. So we got a titanium scales, pretty plain titanium. It's gonna be like this on all the knives. Not saying it's a bad thing, but it is a little bit plain, yeah. We also got M390 blades on all the models that I'm gonna show in this video. We've got a satin finish, hollow grind, or more like a compound perhaps, hollow, and then it's a bit thicker here perhaps, more of a flat grind there. Anyways, let's go over the specs before going over all the design aspects. So we've got a total length here of 210 millimeters, so 21 centimeters in total length, meaning that this is not a small knife, not the largest knife I own either, but medium large size perhaps. We got a blade length of 90 millimeters. I'm gonna say this is a medium sized knife, and we've got a close length of 120 millimeters, so 12 centimeters in close length, 21 centimeters in overall length, and 9 centimeters in total in blade length. We've got a blade thickness here of 4 millimeters, which to me is sort of the sweet spot in general for folders. I really do prefer around 4 millimeters in thickness. Unless I want something really slicey, then we can, cut it almost in half or go like 3 millimeters. But 4 millimeters to me is a sweet spot in general, I will say. We've got a weight here of, I think it's supposed to be like 190 grams. I didn't bring a scale out here, but it does seem reasonable. So almost 200 grams. So it is a bit on the heavy side given the overall length here. Chunk of titanium and M390. It is a frame lock. You can also see the M390 there. Let's see if it's possible to notice it there. Yeah, perhaps you can see it, perhaps not. But a frame lock design with a pretty solid lockup. Let me check it out here. I'd say around 30% lockup. No blade play, which is very nice. Closing action is smooth. Opening action is pretty swift. Has a very specific sound to it. Unlike a lot of other folders. Not sure how well it can be heard here on the camera. I should have like a special microphone just for knife sounds, right? But it does sound quite nice. Blade centering on this one is spot on, 100%. And like I mentioned, this is Reat made, so I expect no less in terms of fit and finish, opening and closing action, etc. The flipper tab has some jimping to it, and a general design that makes it very easy to flip the knife open. And like I said, the flipper tab sort of disappears in the open position. So let's do like this. So right now the flipper tab is, let's see, if you do it like this, you can drop the flipper tab out. I mean, it is hanging kind of loose. It's not gonna disappear in any way. No, it is attached securely. But just so you get an understanding that the flipper tab is a freely moving part on this Kickstop version. It is, in the design of the knife. Never really seen this done before. Definitely, the first time I experienced it myself. quite interesting. And I guess this is something we might see on more knives in the probably not too distant future. So let's talk a bit more here. See, balance point here. I bet it's going to be quite back heavy, you know, given the slabs of titanium. Yeah, this is where we find the balance point. Not a big deal, but it is definitely more back heavy than most of my folders, I would say. I wear size 10, fairly large hands. Placing the knife in my hand looks like this. You do have quite a bit of room. It is I was going to say surprisingly ergonomic, but it is, I mean, it's no surprise, it is just very ergonomical. Feels good in my hand. There is a bit of a finger groove here. This edge here, or these corners, are not very sharp. Then again, I mean, this fits my hand almost like a glove, so not sure how other people will feel about it, but in my hands it feels quite nice. Also feels pretty good in a reverse grip as well. Not that I ever use my knife in a reverse grip, but thought I'd throw it out there. We've got a bit of jimping here. Not a whole lot of jimp, I mean, like, not many small jimps, but like large jimping, and it's actually pretty aggressive, not very smooth. I'm not cutting my thumb, it's not really hurting, but it is on the more, you know, sharp and semi-aggressive side. You will definitely get some traction here, making, you know, a secure grip. And let's focus a bit here now. So we got a swedge grind that starts slightly here after the jimping. Not going into a super thin swedge, but nonetheless it is a swedge grind. So we've got this hollow compound grind here and swedge up here. If you want to do some, well, perhaps some piercing of sorts. And if that is what you're looking to do, then maybe you should pick the Tanto version instead of the drop point version. Overall, I like this knife quite a lot. I do perhaps miss the sharpening choil, and well, we're gonna see the same, like I said, non-hidden screws or open screws here on all the new Chaves knives, which I think takes away a bit from the general aesthetics. And the Chaves logo and the Kickstop logo. Overall, a nice solid knife that, you know, that just feels great quality overall. So if you have a good design and you let Riyadh make the knife, then this is, well, kind of what you get. We can take a slightly closer look here at the Tanto version as well. So the specs are identical in, you know, overall length, in closed length, blade thickness, weight, everything is pretty much identical, just that we have the Tanto blade shape instead, which is a tad more aggressive than the drop point version. Once again, it's gonna be, you know, mostly personal preferences, which, you know, decides which one you get, or you do like me and get both of them because you kind of cannot decide, or you feel like both are cool looking knives. So yeah, Tanto. Let's move on to the Liberation 229, the 3 different versions that I do have. Here we have the 3 Liberation 229s or 229s. the drop point, the tanto, and the sangria. So we're gonna do a bit of an unboxing really fast because the boxes are what we have just seen with the Kickstop version with the exact same setup and everything. So let's start with the drop point. I think this should be the drop point at least. So as you can see, identical type of packaging. Luckily though, the knives are different. So this is what the Liberation 229 looks like. Not sure which generation this is, but it is one of the newer ones since the screws are not hidden. And as you can see, this one lacks a flipper tab. So now we are going thumb stud only. But this one is available, I think, with flipper tabs. Or is it the Redencion that is available with flipper tabs? You know what? I'm actually not sure. I am a Chaves novice, so just getting into it. Anyways, let's flip it open. Really swift opening action. And as you can see, this is the drop point version. Yeah, I think it is the Redencion 229 that is offered with flipper tabs. They do a bit of a different grind, and as you can see, there's no jimping or anything on this one as well. So there are some differences, but to the untrained eye, they can look very much alike. So, Liberation 229 drop point version. You know what, let's take a look at the other two as well. So this should be the Tanto, I think. Maybe wrong, but yeah, this is the Tanto. Once again, you know, really aggressive look to it. This one also has some really nice flipping or opening action. Let's put it like that, like this. And then we have the Sangria. Sangria, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it though. Swift opening action. So this is a bit of a more, I'm not going to say unconventional blade shape, but probably the more, you know, unusual blade shape if you compare to like drop point or Tanto version. So, and I think I picked the last one of these, probably not because it's the most popular, but more due to the fact that they made less of this one, I would imagine at least. So let's put it over here. So I noticed something interesting now that I have them placed here on the table like this. I can see that the sharpening choil, or whatever you want to call it, they are identical more or less on the drop point and on the Sangria. But here on the Tanto version, it is actually more like a full fingered choil. I mean, we're gonna go over the specs and everything soon, and I'm gonna go with the drop point for the specs, but this is interesting because I thought they would be identical. This one is much smaller, the shoulder. This one, is it even smaller or is it? It's about the same. So I'm just gonna show this like right away here. So the difference in choil. I mean, quite a noticeable difference, right? Interesting. I wonder why that is. Maybe it is different generations of knives. I am no expert on Chaves, but I kind of reckon it is due to different generations. Other than that, I have no other, you know, reasonable explanation of sorts. So let's put them aside for now. and focus on the drop point for specs. And I'm gonna zoom in the camera, so give me just a second. Let's crunch some numbers, shall we? So, like with all the knives here today in this video, we got titanium and M390 and quite, similar designs in terms of the handles and everything. But anyways, the specs. So we've got a total length here of 209 millimeters. So I'd say like 21 centimeters, pretty much identical, right, to the Kickstop Redencion 229. We've got a blade length here of 93 millimeters. We've got a close length of, I believe, 115 millimeters. And we've got a blade thickness of 4 millimeters, which I mentioned before is sort of my sweet spot in general for my folding knives. Overall, a medium-sized knife, much like the Kickstop Redencion 229. The weight of this one is 167 grams, so it is slightly lighter than the Kickstop version, which was, what was it? 190 grams, perhaps? A bit of a difference. Frame lock design as well, like all others, with a solid lockup of around 30%, I would say, much like the Kickstop versions that we looked at. So the opening action is quite nice and swift. Closing action is also very smooth. Like I said, it's Reat fit and finish. Knife is going to be of high quality in pretty much all aspects, I would say. We've got no blade play, and the centering, let's take a look here. Yeah, the centering is, it is 100%. I thought it was perhaps not 100%, more like 98%, but it is 100%. Argos, yeah, like all others, are quite nice. We got no jimping on here. I was a bit surprised because I kind of thought it would have jimping. I didn't look too closely at photos when I ordered it, and I was like, hey, it's missing some jimping, but it is what the Liberation 229 looks like. Also some different grind lines compared to the Redencion. A bit less complicated, I will say a bit less complicated than the Redencion. Thumb studs on both sides, and they work quite well. I was reaching for a flipper tab there for a second. Like I said, good Argos. Finger choil, or no, this is not a finger choil. This is, I can place my finger here, but it's not really that pleasant. Maybe I even cut myself. No, I did not. But it is, I kind of feel like, when companies go for a sharpening choil / finger choil, like this, why not make it slightly bigger? Like on that, the Tanto version, so you can actually utilize it. This feels a little bit like a waste of blade. And especially if you compare it to the Kickstop version, which does not have a sharpening choil at all, you have like the full length here. So let's take a quick look at these as well, so we can see if like I said, the opening action is nice, the closing action is really nice, more or less full shutty. No blade play. And let's take a look at the centering. Centering is spot on. 30% lockup again. Seems to be the sweet spot, and I don't mind. It is perhaps my sweet spot as well. So opening action on this one is nice. Closing action is kind of smooth. Let's see. So I will say that the action on this one is, it is nice, but it is a bit different compared to the other two. I mean, if I wrist flick it a little bit, it will open up with, you know, authority, but it requires a little bit of a wrist flick that the other two does not require. No blade play. Centering is 100%. Lockup is around 30% like all the others, so they are pretty consistent. Yeah, I mean, with a bit of a wrist flick, sure. Guess they are from different batches, probably. If this one is a, well, I don't know if this is potentially a newer or older generation. If you view this video, and I mean, if you're more of an expert on Chaves than me, then perhaps you can tell me if the one with the bigger finger, like a full finger troll here, is of a newer or older generation. But I do feel a difference in the smoothness and in the action opening. I mean, this one is super smooth. This one is also quite smooth, or very smooth. Whereas this one is a bit different. Maybe it needs some time to break in, I'm not sure. But I do feel like it is different than the other two. Which is perhaps a little bit of a shame, since I really like the finger choil, and I do like the super aggressive look here. I mean, let's do a bit of a comparison again here, like we did with the Kickstop versions. Yeah, this Tanto is really aggressive. I'm not gonna compare this with the Sangre, because, you know, the design of this blade is just so different. I mean, it's obvious how this knife is. Overall, I like this knife quite a bit. Do I like it more or less than the Redencion 229 Kickstop? Well, I'm not quite sure. I mean, they are very different knives, and there are aspects I like with both versions. So if I could have something a cross between them, that would potentially be quite nice, like a finger choil, like a full finger choil, add some jimping, keep the swedge and some of the grind lines, but I really do think that that the Tanto version here has quite, you know, an aggressive look, even more aggressive look than the Kickstop version. Maybe we should actually compare the Kickstop to this one and to the drop. I think we're gonna do that. Give me 1 second so I can bring them out again. So here is the Liberation 229, and here is the Kickstop 229. So we can see they are quite a bit, you know, different. This one to me looks a lot more aggressive. It doesn't have the same kind of, you know, wide or width to the blade. It's more pointy, I would say. But I wouldn't mind, you know, getting the jimping on this one. So this one is also like, you know, hollow here with a swedge grind, flat grind on top here. I said that there wasn't any swedge, but I meant on the drop point here on the Liberation 229, because this one does not have a swedge grind. We're gonna compare the two Kickstop versions. But a combination of these two would be pretty nice. But now we might get a sense, of the difference here between the Redencion on top and the Liberation on bottom. Let's do the same thing with the drop point version as well. So the Liberation 229 drop point and the Redencion 229 Kickstop. So this one does have a swedge grind, a hollow grind or compound grind, and jimping. This one is, the Liberation is quite a bit more plain, like I said, less complex in grind lines and grinds in general. So let's see if we can do like this to get a sense. Much wider blade. Yeah. So let's move on to the Redencion Street now, the smaller, slightly smaller versions. Last but not least, we have the Redencion Street, which is a scaled down version of the full-size Redencion 229. Same type of packaging, but yeah, the box is actually, you guessed it, a bit smaller, or at least shorter, I notice now. So, put in the box on top here, we can see that it is shorter. But it's also, interestingly enough, wider. This is, on top here is the Redencion Street. So we got a wider box than the full size. Not sure why that is needed, but yeah, it's just, just an observation of sorts here. So let's put the boxes aside and then we can focus on the knives themselves. And we're gonna start by unboxing the drop point version, and we can see that the layout is identical. Silica gel, extra pocket clip, and the knife itself. Snappy opening action, and yeah, this is indeed a scaled down version of the Redencion 229. Definitely has a more compact feeling, of course, since it is they're keeping everything in proportion, sort of just making it slightly smaller. And we've already gone through the design aspects and everything on the full size, but we will do some specs to begin with and then talk a little bit about the design as well for people that are skipping to this part right away. Titanium handle, titanium slabs, just like the others, and M390 blade. And since this is a Redencion model, it has a bit more, to me, interesting grind lines than the Liberation model. Here we have this hollow grind, more of a flat grind up here, we got a swedge, we got some interesting grind lines. And with interesting, I mean kind of awesome. So let's take a look at the specs now, shall we? We've got a total length here of 190 millimeters compared to the full size, which I think was 21 centimeters. So 19 centimeters compared to 21 centimeters. We've got a blade length of 83 millimeters, so 8.3 centimeters in blade length. And we've got a close length. Let's see how it is in closing action. Smooth. A close length of 108 millimeters, so that means it is more or less 11 centimeters in close length. They decided to stick with the same blade thickness or spine thickness of 4 millimeters. One could have thought that they would make it, perhaps thinner, but I'm glad that they stayed true to the original and just, scaled the general size down. Keeping the sweet spot for me here of 4 millimeters. This is supposed, in my opinion, to be a compact stout knife, and that needs to keep the blade thickness. The weight of this one is specified to 149 grams. I can't remember on top of my head what the weight was of the full size, but it is quite a bit lighter. But still, I mean, still quite a hefty piece of knife here in terms of weight, since the titanium scales and the blade thickness is what it is. So this is not a light knife by any means. Let's see, it should still be quite back heavy, right? Or even more back heavy, perhaps. So this is where we find the balance point on this smaller sized version. So we know that the closing action is quite nice, right? Yeah, and the opening action is swift. The lockup is, yeah, like all the others, around 30%. Very consistent. No blade play. Let's check the centering as well, shall we? See, yeah, centering is 100% dead centered. The the choil here, sharpening choil perhaps, is on the smaller side once again, so can't really utilize it, or smaller side. I mean, the Kickstop version that we took a look at in the beginning of the video, it did not have a sharpening choil. Like I mentioned when I spoke about the Kickstop version, is that the blade goes all the way down here. You don't even have the smallest of sharpening choils. And obviously on the Kickstop version you do not have thumb studs, since it utilizes the special flipper tab which disappears, which is the entire thing about the Kickstop version. So there are a few differences between this scaled down version of the Redencion 229. There is of course also a larger version of the Redencion 229 which looks exactly the same as this one. It's just that the Kickstop version is the newest upgrade generation, or just the newest version of the Redencion 229, which means that there are a few differences in the design. Let's start a comparison with the Redencion Street versus the Redencion 229 Kickstop version. So there are some differences here that we need to address. Overall, I mean, the knives should share a lot of similarities, which they do, especially in terms of handle, the grind lines, etc. But the main difference, I would say, is of course the way you open this knife. Since you're using a flipper tab, that disappears, whereas you use the thumb studs on the Redencion Street. Furthermore, we do have quite a bit of a large sharpening choil here on the Redencion Street, whereas the full size here, the Kickstop version, does not offer any type of sharpening choil, giving you a bit extra furthermore blade length than the smaller one. But aside from that, these two are, they share a lot of similarities. I mean, they are, quite alike in terms of handles and grind lines, with this one being smaller and this one being larger. If I had an extra hand, I would do like this, and if I had an extra knife and put the Redencion 229 non-Kickstop version in the middle, so we could compare them all, but I do not have that version. It was sold out, I believe, and it was also with, or was it sold out? I don't remember, but I do not have it at least. But this is the comparison between these two specific versions. Perhaps do like, I don't know, like this. It's not so easy fitting stuff in the camera right now. So let's also compare the Tanto versions, shall we? Redencion Street and Kickstop version. Same goes here with, you know, the opening mechanism being the difference and the lack of a sharpening choil on the Kickstop version. Let's see if we can do like this as well. Try to get a feel for, you know, the size. It's not so easy. Yeah. So which one you prefer? I prefer both, I think, but it's gonna be personal preferences as always. We have now reached the first sharpness test here, or perhaps the only sharpness test we're going to do in this video. I'm not quite sure, since there are so many knives. We have 7 knives we're going to have to test out the edges on. I'm going to try to be as efficient as I possibly can. So we're going to do some slicing of regular printing paper and newspaper. Very different types of paper. And if the knives can slice both the printing paper and the newspaper with ease, I would consider the edges to be on the sharp side, definitely. And we're gonna start with the printing paper here. Gonna start out with the drop point version of the Kickstop Redencion. So it is sharp, not scary sharp, but it is sharp. Let's try out the Tanto version. This one is also obviously sharp, perhaps a little bit less sharp than the drop point version. Not scary sharp, but it slices the printing paper quite nicely. Then we will go with the Liberation 229 drop point version. Oh, I can definitely feel a difference in sharpness here. Interesting. This one is actually quite a bit sharper than the Kickstop version. Then we have the Tanto version here of the Liberation. And it's also a little bit sharper, I would say, than the Kickstop version. Last we have the Sangria, or Sangre, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it actually. This one is also quite sharp. So that was kind of interesting that I can feel a difference in sharpness between the Liberation and the Redencion Street. I mean, they do have quite different blade grinds, so could be something about that. Then we have the Redencion Street, the smaller one. Okay, we go with the Tanto first. That one was sharp as well. And the drop point. So this is a little bit interesting because I feel like there is a little bit of a difference in sharpness, where the Kickstop versions are not, they don't slice as fine as the others. With this Tanto version being the one that is the least sharp of the bunch. And when I say the least sharp, they are all sharp knives, no doubt, but sitting here and slicing paper like this, you will feel a difference. So I'm just putting it out, but they are still, quite good at slicing paper. Next up we have newspaper. Let's see how it fares. So we're gonna start with the drop point. Kickstop Redencion. So that was actually quite nice. Let's go with the Tanto version here. Yeah, I mean, they will definitely slice the newspaper. So, Liberation drop points. Oh man. This one is scary sharp. Oh man. Yeah. Super sharp. Let's try the Tanto as well. Yeah. These knives are most definitely very sharp. Then we go with the Sangre. Yeah. Incredibly sharp as well. And that leaves us with the Redencion Street. Let's go with the, I want to go with the drop point first. Doesn't really matter, but yeah, Redencion Street next. Yeah. Very sharp. And then we have the Tanto of the Redencion Street. It is quite sharp as well. So to sum it up, all the knives will slice printing paper and magazine newspaper quite well. The Kickstop versions were not really on par with the others in terms of sharpness, slicing paper, but they both sliced printing paper and newspaper fairly easy, I would say. The newspaper easier than the printing paper. So I mean, the sharpness level on these are really good. Make no mistake, they are really sharp knives, will do a great job. It's just that the sharpness of these ones were, well, even better, to put it simple. So let's try to sum some thoughts up here. I don't want this video to get super lengthy. I mean, just going over all the designs, all the specs, the designs and trying the sharpness. This is going to be a lengthy video, I know it right away. So I'm going to try to you know, summarize some thoughts here. Overall, this is my first real experience with Chaves, and I went kind of all in, as you can see. All the knives here are also available, I think, in G10 scales, but I do prefer titanium scales, and I think that the cost difference between the titanium and the G10 is a little bit too small. So for me, it was an easy choice to go with the titanium versions. I will say that these knives, they kind of look a little bit plain to some people in terms of the handles, but when we talk about the grind lines and the blades, they are a lot less simple, I would say. And sometimes, I mean, simple is not a bad thing. These are very comfortable functional handles. It's just that there are no like inlays or milling or any patterns or anything. Is there an internal milling, by the way? I never checked that. No, there are no internal millings on any of these, I reckon. So no fancy backspacers or anything, but I mean it is this is a knife made to be a functional tool of premium materials. But I will admit that the reason why I never really went with the Chaves knives was, well, part one, I wasn't a fan of the pocket clip, but that grew on me. but I would have liked the older type of pocket clip with the hidden screws here. But I realized that, you know, including the extra pocket clip, they want to make it easier to remove it and change it. So I get it, but from an, you know, aesthetical point of view, the hidden screws were nicer. So, which are my favorite knives on the table here? Well, I'm not quite sure because I haven't had them for so long and I want to mess around with them a bit more. But like I mentioned somewhere in the video, I would have liked to see, like, if we go with the Liberation here, I think it has a, and this is the Tanto version, a really nice aggressive look to it. But I would have liked some jimping perhaps on it. And I do like that they went with, for whatever reason, a full finger choil on this exact knife. This is the only knife here which has, you know, a large enough finger choil to actually be used as a finger choil. And I do not know why that is, if this is a older generation or a newer generation, I have no clue. All I know is that these are, you know, the smaller ones here, the Redencion Street is generation 4, and I know that these Kickstop versions were released just, you know, like some weeks ago or months, so they are probably the newest knives of the bunch here. And you know, which blade shape you prefer? I mean, I think that this looks the best, the Tanto. Probably the same with the Kickstop version here, and with the non-Kickstop version. But that is more from a you know, aesthetic perspective. I think that for me, the drop point is probably the knife that I will put to most use. I mean, I tend to like more, you know, mainstream blade shapes for EDC and such. I also would have perhaps liked, you know, if we take a look here at the drop point of the Kickstop version, which is the same type of grind lines here on the Redencion Street. I kind of like this, you know, the grind lines compared to the even more simple Liberation 229. Then again, I mean, variation is nice. So, and I can't say which is going to be my favorite one, and my favorite one is going to change from time to time as well. Like this year I might have a favorite, like let's say the drop point Liberation. Next year it might be something else. I'm not sure if this one is actually offered in a smaller version. So we know that the Rendition is offered in a smaller version, but I do not know if the Liberation is offered in a smaller version. It probably is, but I'm still kind of new to Chaves knives. I'm still trying to get all the names and versions and everything correct. I might have messed something up in this video. I don't think I have, but I might have. And I know that there are a lot of you viewers that know these knives a lot better than I do. But if you've been on the edge about getting one and you might feel like, they look too simple, or I'm not sure it's worth the price, because these knives are actually on the pricey side. Then again, I mean, they are made by Riyadh, so you are getting some really good, really great fit and finish. And as the sharpness test showed, they're all really sharp knives. Sure, the Kickstop versions were a little bit less sharp compared to the rest of them. I do not know exactly why, but even so, being less sharp, they are still very, very sharp knives. I'm sure that you will be satisfied with the sharpness. It's just that these were on, you know, 1 or 2 steps above in terms of slicing paper, because that was the only sharpness test we actually did in this specific video. All in all, I think that all of these knives are really nice, really cool, well made, and can't wait to see what Chaves is going to bring us in the future. Over and out.